I still get nervous when I'm launching a new program. I still sometimes have thoughts of, am I actually helping enough? Am I serving enough? Am I giving? And I would need to look for the data to show that, yes, I am giving people the ROI and all of that other stuff that I know. But these are normal human thoughts.
Hi, Docs. I'm Dr. Latifat. I'm the host of the Money Fit MD podcast. This is where we help badass women physicians just like you learn simple and effective tools to build wealth from the inside out. That way, we can create wealth and bigger impact without all the burnout. Enjoy the episode.
All right, y'all, get ready. You're in for a treat. I'm dancing before I even press record because actually this is my guest third time, I believe, on my podcast.
I think so.
And I am really delighted to hang out because, okay, so here's the deal. I'm not going to be interviewing her. We're going to be having a conversation and we're letting you guys into the living room pretty much. So you can eavesdrop on this conversation that I'm going to be having with my friend, my colleague, Dr. Leti, who is the founder or co-founder of Semi-Retired MD, which is one of the most prominent real estate education platforms for physicians. But also she's a business coach helping women physicians and women in general. For all y'all that have been like, Latifat, can someone help me if I'm not a doctor? She got you, boo. And what she does is she helps women build successful businesses. So welcome, Leti.
Thank you. This is going to be so much fun. I love spending time with you.
So for those that don't know you, do you want to just give us a quick cliff note of who you are and how you became this visionary business owner that you are today?
I think it's like a lot of us, we become accidental entrepreneurs. So I am a family medicine trained hospitalist and ended up getting together with a guy, Kenji, who was another hospitalist at the time, but was a serial entrepreneur. And when I got together with him, he was doing a startup. And I thought I would help him in quotes, and ended up getting very involved in the day-to-day, learned a lot in the process. There's a lot to learn as an entrepreneur and had a lot of growing pains in that first couple of years. He ended up selling that portion of his shares of his business. We ended up starting a startup to compete with that business, which is a whole story. Then we ended up selling our shares of that. Meanwhile, we were building a real estate portfolio also on the background. And then ended up starting Semi-Retired MD in 2018 as a blog, then really built our first course in 2019. And now I have Fast Forward Capital too, by the way, which we didn't even mention. And then Biara, which is my latest business that is just really, so passionate about it. It's helping women entrepreneurs build and scale their businesses. So that's my story.
So someone's listening right now and they're like, but you've done multiple businesses. Why would you start another business?
Oh my gosh, I ask myself that sometimes. It's why the heck did I need more on my plate? Because I didn't, right? I have 3 little kids, travel 6 months a year, and I already have really 3 big businesses going. Why did I start another one? I felt very called to do it. I mean, that's probably one answer. Here's another one. I had a medium once time that I saw, and they were like, you're meant to follow a pink path and you're meant to help women entrepreneurs and you're meant to help them run down this path. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, that's exactly right. I'm meant to help more women. And Semi-Retired MD has 60% women. And we definitely help a lot of women that way. But I felt so passionately about helping women be business owners because I love business. You love the game of business, right? We love learning how to do it. We love how to know how to do all the different pieces. It's just so much fun and it helps you become so much more of who you can become in the world. And so I just felt so passionate about helping women be able to do it at a different level, but also with more ease because it can be very heavy. You and I were just doing my podcast. We were talking about the masculine feminine piece, right? Which is really important. We're trained how to do it as a masculine push through and that doesn't always work for us and it exhausts us. So I wanted to do it differently.
I love it. Let me ask you about your own journey when it comes to business. So you launched a business and did you see success right away? And I'm asking that because there's so much that people don't talk about when it comes to business that makes women feel like they're failing because of an expectation they have in their head of what business is supposed to look like. So take us back to that first business that you had. Was it an instant success? What were some of the things that made it successful or not successful from the get-go? And what can people learn, especially people that are starting out, from that part of your journey?
So first of all, I have to say that every business, even if it's early, has some early success, has lots of failures. Even thinking about Semi-Retired MD that's been around, really, we launched our first course in 2019. So it's now 7 years in, or yeah, almost 7 years in. We still have failures. Okay. So that first business was actually a business teaching doctors how to do better charting to be able to make the hospital more money and also reflect the level of care that the patient required. So it actually would lead to also basically more accurate statistics and then also better patient care because we were making sure that there were definitions for diseases and that everyone was following consistent definitions. So things would get caught, like hyponatremia would get caught faster or sepsis would be caught faster. So it had a lot of benefits both for the hospital, but also the patient. So I felt really good about that. But like every business, there's challenges. And I think one of the hardest parts of business is marketing and sales. And so I remember how it was as a startup to go out and talk to these hospitals. And we were selling literally in hospitals. So it would be $1 million deal, but to get there would take 12 months and maybe you would get some traction. And it was scary to do that ask and to sit in those meetings with all these executives of hospitals. And mind you, I was just a year out of residency. And interestingly enough, even in my second business, I remember I would send an email and there'd be Kenji and there was another guy I was doing the business with, both of them 10 years older than me, both of them more experienced, and people would write back, they'd write back to them. They wouldn't write back to me. So there was a lot of both of myself having a lot of self-doubt, a lot of feeling like didn't belong in that room, but also there was some element of I truly was the only woman in the room and I was the youngest person in the room. So there's the business part, but then there's also the battle within, which is a really important part of business.
Yes. And what are some things that has helped you with that battle?
Just getting comfortable with discomfort, really. It has reduced over time, but it still comes back. Like fear is a natural part, I think, of doing anything new. And so anytime I do anything new, I still have discomfort. I still have fear. I still have my brain still offers me thoughts like imposter syndrome or thoughts that are not useful at all. And so it doesn't necessarily go away, at least in my experience. Maybe it has for you, Latifat, but I still find I have those thoughts come from my brain and I literally just have to say, okay, I recognize it. And that's one of those normal pieces of what I believe or think at that moment. And now I'm going to ignore it and I'm going to move forward anyway. And so you get better at recognizing it as normal to have fear and normal to have your brain give you anxious thoughts or thoughts that are not helpful at all. And you start to just kind of dismiss them.
Yeah, no, thanks for saying that because many times people think, oh, I am uncomfortable because I'm just starting out.
Oh, no.
What ends up happening is the more you realize that is BS and you take the action, you start to create a track record for yourself. So I still get nervous when I'm speaking. I can't count how many times I've spoken on stages. I still get nervous when I'm about to speak on stages. I still get nervous when I'm launching a new program. I still sometimes have thoughts of, am I actually helping enough? Am I serving enough? Am I giving? And I would need to look for the data to show that, yes, I am giving people the ROI and all of that other stuff that I know. But these are normal human thoughts. They don't go away. They get less loud. You believe them less because you're like, oh yeah, I believed that before and I saw that was not true. But the key is you cannot let those thoughts stop you because if you do, you're never going to accomplish what you want.
Yeah. And you would never keep going because business makes you very uncomfortable. That's just the norm. And since we're on a finance podcast, I think it's important to say the same as with your finances. There are times I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm worried about my business. And I go look at my financial spreadsheets and I'm like, oh, okay, Never mind. It's okay. And same with your personal finances. If you're tracking your net worth, like you can go and you can look at it because your brain wants to tell you this wild stuff. It wants to tell you that you're like, you don't have enough money or all these weird things. And you literally, if you're tracking your finances, you can go look at them and you have evidence that your brain is wrong because most of the time it's wrong.
Yes. And if you look at it and you don't like what you see, now you can change it.
And now you have the certainty of knowing where you are. And so when you know where you are, now you can figure out how to get to where you want to be because you're actually not being delusional. You're actually looking at where you are in real life. And you're also not making up stories about how it's much worse than it actually is either.
And that is more common than you would realize. I can't tell you how many people come into my world and they find out they have more money than they thought. They were living in scarcity when there was no need to. And that's why I'm such a huge proponent of spending 1 hour a week looking at your personal finance, 1 hour a week chases like all the brokes away so that you can actually know and stop tolerating nonsense that hospitals are dishing your way because you thought you were broke when you're sitting down on multi-7, high six figures net worth. You ain't broke, you just ain't looking. So that's a little.
And
So
track your personal finances and your business finances and do trends over time, right? Because one moment in time doesn't really reflect which direction it's going either. And so you have to look at those trends. Like even my business finances, I see where I am now versus my budget. And then I'm looking back multiple years and seeing a breakdown of, and that's really what allows you to know which direction you're going to.
yes, look at the data in your personal, in your business. I love it. So let me ask you this question, Leti. You're talking to your girlfriends. What are some mistakes that you're seeing that women are making when it comes to their businesses that's making us not have? I talk about wealth gap. I talk about from a personal finance perspective, but from a business perspective, what are those things that you're like, okay, if you're making six figure, close to six figure, these are some of the things that you want to avoid or you want to do in order to be able to grow to the next level? What are those things that you've learned?
So number one, I know it's got to be mindset. If you can't manage your mind, like it is going to drag you away to tell you all these stories that we're talking about. And so you have to gain these skill sets where you can recognize that your mind's giving you thoughts, but that you get to choose your thoughts, you get to choose your story, you get to choose the meanings of things that happen because you'll have a challenge and you can absolutely go off the rails or just even want to quit your business. That's a normal feeling for a lot of people is to feel like, hey, I want to escape. I want to quit this. And so if you can manage your mind, if you can learn the skill sets to manage your mind, that's going to give you so much further in your business because you will keep going. Another one is to know why you're doing your business. It may seem so simple, but having a reason beyond the finances of it or reason or the freedom of it for yourself is important because you may not have those initial finances. You may not have that freedom even in the first six figures. It's actually you may find you have less freedom, you have less finances. So you have to have a greater reason beyond that, I think. And I just love being around people who have such a purpose in their business because it's such a fuel that keeps us going when that personal finances and the freedom aren't there because we remember why we're doing this and it's beyond us. And it's that contribution piece that you're going to need to tap into because I think it's so easy. I remember I definitely crossed seven figures with semi-retired MD pretty quickly. And I remember getting so obsessed with I want to say fundamentals or the nitty-gritty details of CEOing and the finances and the team building and all those pieces. And I wasn't spending enough time remembering why I was doing it, like my why and my purpose and stuff like that. And it's so easy to get distracted with that when you're so focused on the business. So I think remembering that, keeping it in the forefront, reminding yourself of it is really important because if you get so caught up into the weeds of the details of the business, though important, you'll burn yourself out. You really will. You have to remember why you're doing it. And then lastly, I think thinking you have to do everything yourself. That's such a common one for us doctors. And we are so used to like saying, hey, I'll do it, or I got to do this because I can do it best, or I'll make sure it gets done. we have to start to rely on other people and to trust other people and to find those right A players. And I call them A players, their culture and performance fit, and start to delegate, not abdicate, delegate some of those pieces so that we can expand beyond ourselves. Because if we just stay as a solopreneur and we keep our businesses small, only up to what we're able to do, I think we do the world a disservice because we're not allowing ourselves to have as much impact as we could.
Hmm. You mentioned delegation versus abdication. Talk to us about that. What's the difference from a practical level? Because I'm like, if I delegate, I'm hoping to get it done so I can have time. Tell me a little bit more about that.
So first of all, I think a lot of us, and especially newer business owners, think people are going to come in and save us. I have made that mistake so many millions of times where I'm just like, oh, I just want somebody to come in and save me. And if you're hiring because you need to be saved or because you're like, that energy, you and I talk about the energy of it and scarcity, like you're literally coming from a place of lack and you're hoping something's going to help you. It's not, first of all, nobody's going to save you. Nobody is the perfect solution. And also when you come from that trying to run away from something, I think the energy just doesn't work very well oftentimes. And so ideally what you do is you learn a position or you learn the tasks. You're able to outline them or do an SOP, and then you're able to recognize what skill sets the individual needs that you can hire for those skill sets, and then you can hand off that task. And ideally, they improve that the way the task is done. That would be a true A player. They would take what you've done, but they've seen things that you haven't seen, and then they improve it over time. But at the very least, they could take it and they could do it. And of course, if they maybe the first time do it and it's not great, you can retrain them, right? And help them be able to do it well again. But it's not having somebody come in just saying, oh, save me. Here's all the things I know and just dumping it on them and not giving them any sort of structure and then expecting them to be able to figure out something that you haven't really understood, because also you can't manage them too. If you don't know how to do it, you can't really manage them too.
What you shared now reminds me of my most recent hire with MoneyFit MD versus my first hire in MoneyFit MD. Oh my goodness. It's a miracle my first hire was able to function because it was definitely a save me mentality. But with it's a difference between when you have your first kid as a resident, where you're like, child, this is some oxygen, survive, versus when you have a kid as an attendant, you're like, hey, now I can better help you be well. And I'm glad to see that even with time that I have grown with of course, I've had many people in between, but I think sometimes we think that we can't get better. We don't think that consciously, but do you find that we tend to think that we cannot get better at things? Like if we failed at it, we can't get better?
So first of all, I think we have so many limiting beliefs about what's possible. And then we get to some level and we're thinking, oh, we're not going to have any more, but there are more. I remember I had a multiple 7-figure business and I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to get to 8 figures. That was my story my brain gave me and I believed it. And then one day I was like, wait, I had never built a 7-figure business like this quickly or like this. And now I've done it and now I'm believing I can't build an 8-figure business. Like, where does that even come from? It didn't even make sense. So again, your brain comes up with this stuff and it's so easy to believe it and to believe you can't do stuff. No matter where you are in your business career, if you're in your first throes of your startup and you're 6 months in or you're 7 years in, you're still going to have stuff that comes up that's shocking to you when you realize it was a limiting belief holding you back. And oh my God, I just think back to my first employee at Semi-Retired MD. And I absolutely agree, Latifat. I think there's a story that Keith Cunningham says that's so funny. It's, you decided to start a business. You had an entrepreneurial seizure. That's what he calls it, entrepreneurial seizure. And you looked around at the 8 billion people on the planet and you said, of all the people, who is the most qualified? Who will be the best leader of this business? Who's going to be able to do the most incredible job? Who has the most experience? And then you looked in the mirror and you said, it's me. Right. And he's, no, you didn't interview anybody. You just decide you had an entrepreneurial seizure and you decided you were going to do it. I think that's how we do it with our first employees too, right? We're like, have an entrepreneurial seizure. We're like drowning. We're like, somebody's going to save me. Let me go hire my babysitter, which is what I did. Let me go hire the person next door. Let me go get a family member. Right. And we're just like desperate. And we're just like, somebody help me. That's exactly what I did too.
Oh, gotta love it. You know what? You did that and now you're here. But that needed to happen so you could be here.
Oh, for sure. Every error that I've made, and I've literally made millions of dollars of errors in all these businesses I've done. I can see now they were necessary for my growth. And the only downside would have been if I didn't learn from them. I learned a lot of lessons along the way.
So let's talk about that. How do you not feel bad or sad or broken by your failures? Because many times don't we make mistakes or failures? It's over.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think so many of us make the failures. Oh, I'm going to put it this way. I once had a coach who said, why do you love yourself? Or do you love yourself? And I said, of course I love myself. And she said, why? And I said, well, because I'm doing this and I do this and I help people this way and I do this and blah, blah, blah. And then she said, okay, do you love your kids? And I was like, yeah, of course I love my kids. And she said, why? And I said, because I love who they are and I love who they're going to become. And she's like, do you hear the difference? And it's like we have all these expectations that we're going to do these things and we're going to do them this way and it's going to work out perfectly. And that's how we get our value and even our self-love. And I know I was that way for a long time too. And because even I remember back in 2019, like writing something about the purpose of my life is to love myself and others from a place of wholeness, which meant I didn't feel whole at that time. And so I suspect it's from having so many freaking failures and making myself up and just realizing that's part of the journey. You cannot avoid failures. You can't avoid screwing up. You can't. It's just part of life. And so I think I just got perhaps used to it.
Because you failed enough time and recover faster. And you
Yeah.
just keep failing and recovering faster. So the more we try to avoid failure, the slower we're going to get to where we want to get to, essentially.
And also, your business does not reflect your value in any way in the world, and neither does your job. That's the being piece, right? Who you are, how you show up for others, how do you love people, how do you care for people around you? That's really, to me, that's the value that you bring in the world. And so whether or not I get a goal is not, it doesn't reflect on the value of who I am. And somehow I got there along the way. And I can't say it was one day that I woke up and that's what it was, but perhaps it was just failing enough times along the way to finally realize that my worth was beyond my achievements.
So let me ask you a question then. What matters to you now? What matters?
So I just got back from Date with Destiny, Tony Robbins event, and I put my values. And my number one value for many years now has been love. And with your values, you also have rules for how you feel values. And so say somebody had a value of success, and then they have all these rules for success of how they can feel it. And oftentimes they're very challenging. They're like, I have to have 7-figure business. I have to have my kids at school on time every single day. I have to have a relationship with my husband that I never fight. Like they make these really tough rules. So for me, mine has been love for some time. And it's also been that I feel love whenever I'm myself, or whenever I see the beauty in others, or whenever I see the beauty in the environment. My second value now is allowing, which is allowing means that there's a perfection of the world. And I recognize that even if I don't see the greater plan right now, or I don't really understand why something is ending up that way, that I allow that it's already perfect. So when you get to that point where you have those are my values now, I truly live them. Like I can sit back and I can say, we were just talking about my head of business. One of my businesses quit last week. I'm sad about it. And I also see his life happening for me in some way that I cannot yet see. there's good in it too. I can feel sad and I can know that there's a greater purpose that I can't see at the same time. I can hold both perspectives. So what's important to me? Relationships, loving people, being the best version of me I can be. And I set business goals for the fun of it. Not like we were talking about setting goals and needing to get to them and the scarcity of it. And that is where I used to be, like the achievement of it and stuff. And I think it's so much less so, even so much so that my goals this year, even more than anything, of course, I've set OKRs for the business, but they're really just about being myself more. And that's it.
At what point do you think that changed? Was there an age? Was there like a level that your business got to? Because someone is listening right now, and you know how they're like, it's easy for you to say because now you're looking back. But I'm curious, at what point did
It's
that?
not about business success. It's not about money in the bank. It is not. I'm going to echo what you said just now in my podcast, which is it's actually about spiritual growth, truly. And for me, that looks a little bit different. I'm in the magic of the universe and all about energy and all those pieces that are a little bit different than how you say them, but they're deep down. It's the same thing. It's a growth where you realize there's so much more, and the true beauty of the world is human beings and their souls and how you connect with them and how everything is. I'm going to cry. Oh, sorry. I cry about this because it's just the beauty of everyone and everything around you. And at a certain point, you realize it's just profound.
That's okay. Hey, we're talking about what matters. What matters, because these are conversations that we have sometimes behind closed doors, but this is what we need to normalize, what it's really about. The growth is important because its impact, the numbers matters, the KPI matters, the dashboard matters, but all of those are not meant to be sticks we spank ourselves with. They are meant to be the how to the who. It's interesting. I think it was my brother-in-law asked me a couple of weeks ago, said, how is Money Fit MD doing? And anytime people ask how anything is, I actually take a moment to actually think about it. And I said, Money Fit MD is what God gave me so I could have something to have faith about. And the key is the businesses, the assets, all of those goals that we have is so that we can become. We want to do it. Listen, this is still a financial podcast, so we don't want y'all getting any liability. Let's just be that. But there is something at the end of the day, money matters, metrics matters, reaching the most successful businesses, helping, all that matters. But at the end of the day, this person, this version of you probably may not have come out if you did not have something big enough to bring it out of you.
That's right. Enough. And you had to grow enough. You had enough challenge. You had to have enough failure. You had to have enough tough times where you really dug to become who you really were and to reach your potential. And that's one of the most beautiful things that business does for you. But it doesn't do it by making it easy. It's the tough pieces that help you have faith that there is a greater reason that all this is happening to you, but it's ultimately for your growth. That's it. It's for your growth. And why do you grow? So you can give more. That's it.
So you can be more, have more, give more of everything: time, energy, money, capacity, skills, all of that.
Yourself.
How has this impacted you as a parent?
Having a business?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I am training my kids completely differently. I really want them to learn to have the confidence and kind of trust themselves. And I understand that self-confidence comes from doing hard things. So I actually want them to have challenges. I don't want it to be easy for them. And so I celebrate effort and I recognize failures. I recognize when things are hard. I encourage them to do a lot of things independently. I let them make a lot of their own choices. And maybe this was partially me and who I am too. And naturally, I don't know. But when my kids are 3, 4 years old and they go to a hairdresser and the hairdresser says, "What do you want, mom?" And I'm like, ask them. Like, I don't control their hair. They're like 3 years old. They can choose like what they want. And so I think I'm just trying to raise them to be independent beings, It's important to me that they aren't entitled. And perhaps that would have been the case too without business. But I think and lastly, I want them to have a greater purpose. I want them to contribute. I read Deepak Chopra's book. It's called The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. Such a good book. And in there, he talks about how he told his kids he does not care what grades they get. He does not care about really anything except that they look for their purpose, look for their thing that they can give to the world that's unique from them, and that they serve others. And if they can do that piece, like he doesn't care about any other pieces. And I think that's such a beautiful way of putting it. And if we train our kids to have that from the very beginning, where they're looking for what's unique that they can contribute to humanity, and they're looking for ways to give and have a greater purpose beyond just themselves, like who cares if they go to college? Who cares if they do well in school? Truthfully, probably doesn't really matter. So I think that's probably, this entrepreneurship has softened me from that like achievement, go to school, do well, focus that I probably would have had otherwise.
Sounds like your definition of success for your kids looks different.
Yes. And the ways that I give them independence and the ways that I encourage them to make mistakes or enjoy mistakes, see the value in mistakes, and the mindset work is also dramatically different. The mindset work that we do all the time as business owners of suffering setbacks, knowing we control meanings. So something happens, we get to decide what it means. It's completely under our control. It's not some external force. And I didn't learn that until my low 30s. So I'm raising them completely differently. That's the answer.
So I'm going to ask you a question about them. And the question is how we talk about wealth and how wealth is lost by the third generation laying nothing. Do you believe that how you're raising them is going to position them to grow wealth? Because I think it's important, because when people hear the academics and all that, it's, oh, we're trying to raise bums. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because I think I need people to hear that this is success, not creating bombs.
Yeah. No, I completely think it will, because by the way, my kids are homeschooled and I created a grading system. Quality of work is only one of those grades. Creativity is one of the grades, because I want to encourage them to think out of the box, to trust themselves, to listen to themselves, to try new things. Attitude's one, because it's such a good thing for them to be aware of, so they interact with people appropriately within the culture and they can follow those norms so that they're fit in to some extent if they want to. Another one is growth mindset, right? Understanding that challenges are really good things, that they help you to grow. Family contribution, because I want to teach them to contribute to beyond themselves. So those are the things that I'm actually doing in their school. Of course, they're getting math and they're getting English, but that's actually the grade they get every day, are in those areas. And yeah, no, I think it's setting them up for wealth, because they're learning to listen to themselves and not to have the outside world tell them what's okay, what's not okay, that you have to fit in this certain way, that everybody else is doing things. One of our family values is living life outside of a box. And so I'm reinforcing that through that. They're learning to know that nobody's going to save them, that they're going to do it themselves. And so like, even if my son asks for water at the table, like sometimes I'll get it for him, but most of the time I'll say to him, hey, you know how to go get it. You can go get it. Because I want to encourage him to be able to take action for himself if he wants. Like last night, they said, hey, we would like a cookie and a chocolate. I said, okay, give me your reasons then. Tell me why you should get a cookie and a chocolate. Let me have your logical reasons of why you deserve that. And they gave me an argument. Each of them, even the 4-year-old, explained to me why they felt that they deserved this, what they had done outside of the norm that would allow them to have both the cookie and the chocolate, because they were just going to have one cookie. And so I'm just really encouraging them to trust themselves, to be able to make arguments, to ask for what they really want. Yes. Like I encourage them all the time. I'm just like, ask for what you actually want. Maybe I'll say yes, maybe I will say no, but ask for what you truly want instead of just playing small and asking for subsection of what you want. Yeah. And I will add also, what you said about the families losing wealth within the generations. My intention is to set up a way that my kids get a small portion of funds that's adjusted with inflation over time, but that they don't get access to all of my wealth. So they can't get like some big lump sum and then they feel they didn't deserve it. And then they have this guilt and then maybe they never have hunger. I want them to get a small portion a year, which maybe supports them to be comfortable, but that they still have hunger if they truly want more, and that they will contribute and they will grow and they will build something themselves. So they never have that guilt of having wealth that they didn't earn. And that will allow it to last well beyond 3 generations too, because only a small portion gets out for each kid.
I love it. I love it. And that is super duper important. I'm glad I asked you that question because I don't think women hear that complete picture enough. And look, for example, our kids during the summer, there was no summer school or anything. We didn't go to summer school, but I created a curriculum for them that touched on like the different arms of wealth, right? So like they had their work during the summer because we have to be intentional. Otherwise, we will unintentionally create an outcome that we will not like. But there's so many nuggets in that. I think it's important, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, which is especially if you come from a place of scarcity or poverty and you suffered, but we forget that hunger is part of how we succeed. And so when you satisfy your kids so much to the point where they don't have a sense of hunger at all, you may be taking away the stimulus for success from them. And that is how we would create literal couch potatoes. And I talk to lots of women physicians. I hear stories upon stories of people still supporting kids at their 30s and not doing stuff with their life. And if you're listening to the podcast, we don't want that for you.
No. I think the other thing is, I can't remember where this article was, but I read an article and it was about athletes, and it was about athletes that went pro versus athletes that kind of never quite went pro. And what the differentiator was that they had a big challenge. And the ones who were able to get through that challenge went pro. The ones who never got through that challenge or never had a challenge did not go pro. And so there was, at the end of the article, argued, so many of us try to make it easy for our kids. We try to make it easy for them to be athletes. We try to take away all the barriers. We try to buy them the best shoes and make it easy for them to get to practice and all those pieces. But we're taking away their opportunity to have to overcome challenges. And when you do that, they will never reach their potential. This is why business gives you your potential, is because you have to overcome challenges over and over again to be successful in business. That's the only way you get there. Do the same thing for your kids. Don't take away all their challenges. Don't make it easy for them all the time. In fact, maybe throw some extra challenges in there to make it harder for them so that they really have to learn how to overcome it. So they don't expect everything to be easy in their lives. And they know that if they persist through, that's where they're really going to get those rewards. I think that's the best thing you can do for them.
Love it. Love it. So good. Always a pleasure having you on here. So share with us, tell us a little bit about how you help women physicians grow successful businesses.
So I started Beyara, Beyara, because I know sometimes that could be hard to spell, really to help female entrepreneurs be able to build and scale their businesses boldly. And by that, to step forward into that CEO-ness, to take that identity on. And we started out with a mastermind called The Wing, which was really aimed at helping women who already had successful businesses go to 7 figures and above. And it's been such a joy to watch a community form. We always love to give content, and like, you and I are teachers, we love that piece, but ultimately it's community, right? It's being around those other people who are doing the same thing as you, getting to talk about the nitty gritty, getting to share that. It's just the most beautiful thing. And then over time, we're going to introduce a membership. We'll introduce a course to help people who have an idea, but want to build their first business. So we'll expand over the years, but it's been such a joy. I love working with female doctor entrepreneurs. I think they're magical. And female entrepreneurs, when we do things for our business, they impact everyone around us. We really, truly impact our communities. And so I hope if a woman's listening to this, she listens to your podcast, she knows wealth is a beautiful thing. And the more, we should never feel guilty about wealth. The more wealth we have, the more impact we have, the more we can help others. And so I really want to help more women really build wealth with their businesses and be able to impact the world in such a beautiful way.
I love it. Where can they find you?
Biara.com, we have a newsletter where every week, either myself or my head of business, we write and give you information like little tidbits and business strategy kind of nuggets. And so that's called the flight plan. So that's at the bottom of the page. We also have some free resources at Biara.com, and then you can learn about the wing there.
I love it. I love it. Leti, always a pleasure hanging out with you. Always a pleasure having you for the podcast. And I know it's not going to be the last time for sure. Thank you for sharing. And that was the whole goal we had at the beginning of this podcast. It was not going to be like a formal interview. It was going to be a conversation that women get to hear and be a part of. And I think we delivered on that. So thank you for coming.
Thank you. You only made me cry once.
Only one time. Only one time. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for listening. Always a pleasure. And don't forget to subscribe. And if you've loved what you heard, share it with other women physicians that could also benefit. Talk to you guys soon.